Can you rise above confusion and chaos to get things in order? Are you taking on more than your share of responsibility? The pressure to break out of old ways and into something new. Can you really be a living example of your values? These are all questions and pressures that this cycle of the human design weather for April 15th to 21st, 2025 will bring. Hello, hello. I'm Margot Fraser, your guide through the cosmic weather. As a certified human design professional and intuitive coach, I'm on a mission to help you know, live, and love the magic of your true nature. In this podcast, Human Design Weather or Not, we explore the conditioning influences of the planetary motions, the transit field. You can't avoid the conditioning pressures. You'll likely notice their effects playing out around you, but rather than you reacting and being pulled off track, this awareness will empower you to navigate the cycle, staying true to your authentic nature and taking advantage of opportunities when correct from you. Okay, well, let's delve into the weather for this cycle. It all begins on April 15th at 8:56 p.m. and goes until April 21st at 3:06 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Universal time coordinates, that's April 16th at 4:56 a.m., going until April 21st at 9:06 p.m. So just remember to convert that to your own time zone so that you know when it starts and ends for you. We always start with the Sun Earth activations as that 70% of the conditioning field. The Sun has moved into gate 3, the trait of ordering and difficulty at the beginning in the Sacral Center. The Sacral Center is a motor that generates life force energy and is correlated biologically with our reproductive organs. This is part of the individual circuitry that can bring through mutation, something new in a pulse of knowing. It points at gate 60, the trait of limitation in the root center that controls the timing of the mutation, the change. Gate 60 represents the old, whereas gate 3, this trait represents the new. But since it doesn't control the timing, there is a need for patience with this one. Its keynote says the fundamental challenge of initiation is to transcend confusion and establish order. When the pulse does come through to break out of the old and into the new, yeah, there's going to be confusion. There's going to be chaos. That's the nature of change. It can also be very innovative, but that's why this trait is called difficulty at the beginning. The potential opportunity that this trait brings is that it can support transcending that confusion and chaos and putting things back in order. If you have this trait in your own design, it's really important for you to have some structure in your life. At the same time, not to be so rigid that you can't change when the pulse for change does come through. There can be a real knowing with this trait that, yeah, confusion is part of life, but it'll all sort itself out. I don't have to get all caught up in it. Clarity will come with time. But yes, it is a process that takes time. Collectively, yeah, we're seeing a lot of chaos, and in time, new structures may emerge out of this for better or worse. It's always difficult at the beginning, but this is individual. So, a great contemplation for you this cycle is what level of structure in your life or what structures that you have maybe already in place can support you, are supporting you in weathering the chaos that might be around you. The cautions here, well, there can be an inability to accept limitations that are present and trying to force the new rather than waiting for that correct timing. You could find that you're really impatient this cycle, just wanting to break free of limitations now. Every individual trait as well can drop into melancholy. And here can be the melancholy that you're being held back. If that happens, do your best to channel that into your creative endeavors, and listening to music that you're in the mood for can help as well. The individual circuitry is quite acoustic. The Earth has moved into gate 50, the trait of values and tribal law in the Splenic Centre, which is our most primal awareness center associated with survival, health, and well being. Biologically, this center is associated with your immune and lymphatic systems. This trait is part of a minor tribal circuitry that still has a big impact in the chart that's called the defense circuitry. That supports survival of the species. So, one part of the defense circuitry is the genetic pressure to make more of us. And the other that this gate 50 is part of is about caring for those offspring. Now, in the larger sense, it can also be about caring for our community, our businesses, our projects, our relationships, and so on. This is the trait of tribal values. It's all about what values and what laws you want to instill into your offspring, your children, your community, your culture, your projects, your business. It's a trait that carries a lot of responsibility because whatever it is that you want to instill, you have to be a living example of that. Otherwise, it's not really going to take. Right? It's going to be very hypocritical otherwise. Its keynote says the value of historical continuity, whose traditional values serve and enrich the present and the future. Now, if those values no longer enrich the present and the future, this is also a place where they can be changed. The potential opportunity here is to gain knowing in the now of what values you do want to instill, and also what values are outdated and really not aligned for you anymore. You may gain awareness of what really is your responsibility and what is not. This is tribal. It's very relationship oriented. After all, if there were no other people around you, what would be the point of having laws and values? Every splenic gate carries a primal fear. And with gate 50, it's the fear of responsibility. If everyone's not taking responsibility for themselves and following the values and the laws, there's going to be a breakdown in the society, in the community, in the relationship. At the same time, there can be laws and values that need to be changed over time. Old ways may not be aligned with the current culture. So the caution here is that you could end up taking on more than your share of responsibility for something or someone, or not enough. If you don't have this trait in your design, it's going to be a learning theme for you. What is the appropriate amount of responsibility? So be careful you're not taking on responsibility for something this cycle out of this pressure rather than your strategy and authority. When we look at the Sun Earth positions together, they bring the potential to mutate and change the current laws and values. This could be in a really beneficial way that enhances the community, the business, the relationship, or it could be rooted in something that's more self-serving. You may see that a value that you've been holding is actually not authentic to you, Or you may find yourself protecting, per se, values that you see others are not holding to. Okay, let's move into looking at the channels that are being created this cycle. When the transit field brings a channel or creates a channel, everyone that doesn't already have it in their design is receiving the activation of the related traits and qualities through the transit field. So it can have a really big impact. Like last cycle, we don't have any medium or long-term transits that are being created. We do have two channels created by the transit of the moon, which means they're just little tasters, little samplers, and that's simply because the moon only stays in a gate activating a trait for about 10 or 11 hours, give or take. So I'll just quickly go through these. April 17th at 5:44 p.m. until April 18th at 4:47 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, that's April 17th at 11:45 p.m. Sorry, 11:44 p.m. until April 18th at 10:47 a.m. The moon is moving into gate 11, activating the trait of ideas in the Ajna Center, our seat of mental awareness. That's connecting with its electromagnetic gate 56, the trait of stimulation activated by Mars in the throat center. Together, they create the channel of curiosity, a design of a seeker. This is part of the mental, collective, abstract, experiential process, all about trying to make sense of life's experiences and then sharing that wisdom in a stimulating way. The mental process here is all about coming up with new ideas out of that making sense process and then sharing them in a way that can stimulate others, typically through stories. Could be very inspirational. This is the place where beliefs are communicated. This is not logic, right? No facts here to back up the beliefs. But at the same time, we know that beliefs can be very, very powerful. The potential opportunities here, well, if you have some stories that you want to share, this is going to be a really supportive period for that. You may have some new ideas that come through that you can share. And if you wait to be invited to share, that's what's really going to support it being shared with the right people at the right time. The cautions are that not all ideas are actually of value. There's a process there, just thinking through, oh, is this really of value to share or not? So you may find yourself expressing out, or you may hear others expressing some pretty fantastical things. It can be a time actually where that can be fun too. It can be kind of whimsical. Like we never know what's going to come through, the different ideas. There can be a tendency, though, out of this pressure to blurt things out rather than waiting to be invited to share. And they could come out in a confusing way and not be to the right people at the right time. Okay, next we have on April 20th, coming in at 10:38 a.m. and going until 9:03 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, that's April 20th at 4:38 p.m. until April 21st at 3:03 a.m. The moon is moving into gate 60, that trait of limitation in the root center. That's connecting with its electromagnetic gate 3, our sun's position. We've talked about that already. That's the trait of ordering. Together, they create the channel of mutation, a design of energy that fluctuates and initiates. Here we have the old, represented by that gate 60, meeting the new of gate 3. So if the pulse comes through, there is the potential to break out of old limitations and into something new, which is going to bring that need to reorder things that we talked about earlier. So there's the potential opportunity for something new to come through. Just keep in mind that you have no control over when or if the pulse will come through. You just have to be present to it if it does occur. The caution is that even if it does come through, you still have to use your own strategy and authority to determine if the change is really correct for you. Now, this can be very innovative because it is bringing through something new if that occurs. But again, out of this pressure, there may be the tendency to jump the gun per se and try to force something new to happen rather than just be in the patience and waiting for that pulse. Okay, that brings us to our long-term transits. The long-term transits are created by the outer planets and the nodes of the moon. They're with us for longer periods of time, years in some cases. So there can be a tendency for your not self mind to start thinking, oh, that trait's part of me, even when it's not something that you have in your own design. And it can be a little confusing when eventually that trait moves out of the transit field. We don't have any long-term transits creating any channels this cycle. So let's just look at the individual traits here being activated. The nodes, which have to do with our environment and our direction, still sitting in gates 36, the trait of crisis, and gate 6, the trait of conflict and friction. So just generally conflict, crisis, friction, that's playing out in our environments around us. That's what the transit field is bringing. They're sitting in line 5. Now, specifically, the North Node is about our perspective and our direction. What do we see when we look out at the world? And it's sitting in that line 5, trait of crisis, gate 36. We also have Venus and Saturn activating that trait. So the theme of crisis continues to be amplified. Line 5 is called the underground, which could have you seen that no matter what, we can make it through crisis, through any experience. Or we could see people jumping the gun out of the pressure of this frequency rather than letting the change unfold in its own timing, which can bring a different type of crisis. So you may have noticed we've got our sun in that trait 3, which is individual mutation coming through, the spark for change, the spark for something new that you hope will get taken up by the collective or the tribe. Here, this is collective. This has its root in impersonal sharing, going through experience, but still change, individual change, collective change. Yeah, strong in the field in this particular cycle. Now, Venus is going to bring a flavor of value, the value of crisis, the value of moving through an experience. Saturn, which is part of our long-term transits, brings limitation, constraints, discipline, consequences. That's in its qualities. For Saturn, it's starting this cycle in line 4 called espionage. And line 4 always has its network. It has the theme of the opportunist. It's interested in knowing the other. And here, the other or others can help you move through crisis and change by providing beneficial knowledge that maybe not everyone else knows about, and even knowledge that might be a little on the esoteric side. You just have to watch that you're also learning about yourself in the experiential process, because line 4 brings a tendency to want to know about the other. On the other hand, in its detriment, it can be selling secret information to others in some way for some kind of benefit in moving through a crisis situation. So hence the name of this line called espionage. Now, Saturn could bring discipline here, using information very wisely in moving through crisis in a very disciplined way. But if you get too caught up in the external, trying to benefit yourself from covert information, perhaps Saturn's going to bring some consequences. In the collective, yeah, well, maybe Saturn's going to expose some blackmailing, some extortion type schemes that have been going on, or the power of Saturn may have people believing they're empowered in their extortions. Inside information may benefit some and discipline others. On April 17th, Saturn's going to move into line 5, which we've already talked about with the North Node. The south node of the moon has to do with what's in our environment. It's sitting in line 5 called arbitration, and it has a developmental theme that we learn with maturity. It says the faith derived from analytical diligence and emotional control that permits a higher authority to judge a conflict. In its exaltation, it says harmony furthered through the avoidance of direct conflict. The detriment is insensitivity to the concerns of others in a conflict, where a party to arbitration sees itself as the best possible judge and will only accept judgment if it's the victor. So very one-sided. On a personal level, if you do have a situation that needs arbitration, this could be a really supportive frequency. Jupiter is sitting in gate 45, the tribal trait of the gatherer. This is the tribal leadership trait. It's the only voice of the tribe. The other circuitry, individual circuitry, collective logic, collective abstract, all have multiple voices in the throat. The tribe has one, and it's the voice of I have, I don't have, we don't have. The gatherer is like the CEO of a business, always trying to gather the support, gather the resources together. It's sitting in line 2. It moved in there on the 12th, which is called consensus. It has a developmental theme that says gathering together is strengthened by acknowledged common interests. So in the exaltation, it's a trait that can bring an inventiveness in finding common ground with others. In its detriment, it could bring a rebellion against conformity. Then on the 17th, it's going to move into line 3 called exclusion. Line 3 always has this theme of trial and error. So there could be this through trial and error, finding a way to be included in the material process, in gaining the resources along with everyone else. In its detriment, it could be quite frustrated, even violent at being excluded from the material resources, the material path, especially being excluded from gaining needed resources. Now, Jupiter is activating this trait. Jupiter can bring an expansion of these expressions. Gate 45, again, it's the voice of the haves and the have-nots. So collectively, there could be a real clash if it's perceived that there's a loss of what one has or anything where a group feels like they're being left out of or denied any resources in question. This is a trait that can be possessive, doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but it wants to have. And its pressure can bring attention for you at a personal level to your material resources. What do you have? What don't you have? What do you need to do to gather more resources? Uranus position is sitting in gate 8, the trait of individual contribution in the throat center, and it's in line 2 called service. It could bring an unusual individual contribution to the whole through you that could really serve others in a beneficial way, and where it's just coming from you being you and not wanting anything out of it. There could also be the polarity of Sure, I'll be an example through my unique expression for a price. Neptune, sitting in gate 25, the individual trait of innocence, spirit of the self, and universal love, or the polarity. It's sitting in line 3 called sensibility, with a developmental theme that says the recognition that innocent action does not in itself guarantee success. So, this is a lesson that Neptune could veil from you or unveil. There can be a resilience here that allows you to withstand failure and not let it negatively impact you. In its detriment, though, there can be a loss of spirit. This is the gate of the spirit of the self, the gate of innocence, but the polarity, loss of spirit, loss of innocence through that trial and error process that could lead to depression, even to taking criminal action, just lost my spirit, whatever. All the things that come out of the inability to accept failure and taking it very, very personally. Pluto sitting in gate 41, the trait of contraction and decrease in the abstract experiential circuitry. This is the gate, the trait of daydreaming and fantasizing about the next experience that you'd like to have. It continues to be in line 2 called caution, which has a theme of humanism tempered by pragmatism, practicality, dreaming about helping others, but it has to be practical. But will you actually take action on it? This is just the formation here, so perhaps not. Or are you expecting that just having the dream itself should be enough to get recognition from others? Remember that for any of these traits, if you don't have them in your own design, the transit field is bringing the pressure of them, for better or worse. You can observe it playing out around you. You might feel it within you. You can learn from these frequencies, but whether there's actually something for you to do is going to be according to your own strategy and authority. So don't let the transit field or this conditioning field run you. That brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. If you want to run your own chart, you can go to jovianarchive.com. And if you're new to human design and you just want to understand the basics of the chart at a high level, what's the black and the red about, the different geometric shapes, a little bit of background on the system itself, you can grab my free Human Design Basics mini course. It's at margotgfraser.com/human hyphen design. There's also various opportunities for readings there if you'd like to go deeper into your own design. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I would be very grateful if you could like this episode and consider subscribing to the podcast. All right. Well, if it's correct for you, take the time this cycle to attune to what's appropriate structure in your life to support you through the confusion and chaos in your own life and around you. What might need to be put in order? Are there any places where you're feeling the pressure for something new and just need to relax and be patient? Let the correct timing come when it does. You might gain awareness of what's really your responsibility to take on and what's not. You might gain awareness of what values have been instilled in you that, aren't actually authentic to who you are and need to be shifted. Watch for trying to force any change or getting caught up in the chaos and confusion rather than allowing these frequencies to support you in transcending it. Also, watch for taking on responsibilities out of this pressure rather than out of your own strategy and authority. Okay, have a great cycle. Be kind to one another, and may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.